What is up, gamers? Today we're going to be talking about why in your handstand practice the wall is not a downgrade but a tool to help you level up. So before we get into all the reasons we use the wall as a tool, we need to talk about some terminology and some basic handstand concepts first. I like to compare a handstand to what it's like standing right side up because they're basically the exact same thing. To stand right side up without falling over, you need to get the majority of your weight over your feet. If the weight falls too far back behind you or too far forward, you fall over. And that's why you'd fall over in a handstand. That's concept number one. You need to get the majority of your weight over your hands in order to be in a handstand, to balance, to not fall over. The next concept we need to talk about is what it means to fall into overbalance and what it means to fall into underbalance. So comparing it to standing right side up, if I were to fall into overbalance, that means the weight is falling too far forward. And then if I were to fall into underbalance, that means the weight falls too far back. That's kind of what I'm going to be referencing to when I say overbalance and underbalance throughout the rest of this video. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into the first reason why we use the wall as a tool. The first reason is because the wall teaches us how to pull out of overbalance and how to pull out of underbalance. All that a handstand is you just making constant micro corrections to keep your weight centered over your hands. So you're constantly trying not to fall forward into overbalance, and you're constantly trying not to fall back into underbalance. So you need to learn how to perform these corrections in order to stay in your handstand. If you don't know how to do it, it's going to be a lot harder for you to learn, just randomly kicking up. The wall teaches us how to perform these corrections. So the first correction that the wall teaches us how to do is how to correct out of overbalance. I'm going to show you what the drill is to learn how to correct overbalance. It's called a heel pull. And so if the wall wasn't here when I'm doing this drill, I would fly over and land on my back, or I'd fall over. I'd fall into overbalance. But since the wall is here, I can now use it as a tool to teach me how to pull my weight from falling over back into a spot where it's centered. And the way I'm doing that here is digging my fingers into the floor. And that's all I'm doing. I'm learning the correction of bringing my weight from flying over back into a spot where I'm centered. So without the wall, it's a lot harder to learn that. But with the wall, we can use it as a tool because we're pulling ourselves out of overbalance. So that's the first way, and the first correction that you need to master to have really good progress with your handstand. The second drill is learning how to pull out of underbalance. So now we're using the wall as kind of a safety net to not fall back down to our feet. So the next step is now I'm using the wall as a tool to stop me from falling into underbalance. So if the wall was not here, I would fall back to my feet. But because it's there, I can use it now as a tool to teach me how to bring my weight from falling back too much and how to move it forward into a spot where it's centered. And the way I do that is by moving my shoulders forward. So shoulders and all the weight of my hips and spine moves forward. And I'm learning, okay, if I'm falling too far back, I need to learn how to move all that weight forward into the hands. So that's one of the first main ways we use the wall as a tool. It's to learn these corrections of pulling yourself out of overbalance and pulling yourself out of underbalance, or learning how to correct falling into over or underbalance. So the next way we use the wall as a tool is to focus on things like building strength, refining your technique, and learning and building strength in new positions. So the first way would be building strength. So whenever we are balancing, whenever there's balance involved in any specific activity, it limits the amount of strength and flexibility that you can express. For example, let's say that you can squat 200 pounds, and then I'm like, all right, let's have you squat on a Bosu ball. Your body's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to exert nearly as much force because it's not stable. It doesn't feel safe to exert a ton of force. So same thing happens with a handstand. Since you're balancing, it can limit the amount of strength and flexibility you can display. And so we use the wall as a way to take balance out of the equation and focus on building strength, refining positions, etc., etc. So for example, if you feel like you need to get stronger in general just with a regular handstand, then ideally you want to be practicing a handstand against the wall and getting stronger in that position, just walking up against the wall and doing holds. Because now you don't have to worry about balance, and all you have to worry about is just getting in the best spot you can and freaking holding it and building strength in this position. And the stronger you are, the easier it's going to be to do a handstand generally. So the next thing would be learning how to be in different positions. When someone's new to doing handstands or they're new to a specific shape that they're trying to work on, they may not know exactly how to perform that. So you don't want to go right away into just trying to balance it. You want to learn the shape on the wall without having to worry about balancing. So for example, a common cue that you'd want to be thinking about when doing a handstand is shrugging the shoulders to the ears. And it's really good to practice doing that against the wall without having to worry about balancing, so you understand what it feels like without having to worry about all these corrections and balancing and landing it. So now that we're on the wall, we can just focus on learning how to get into these different positions that we're trying to practice. So think about shrugging the shoulders to the ears. Oh, maybe I need to think about trying to open the shoulders a little bit more. Maybe tucking in the pelvis a little bit more. And this applies to like really high level skills. I mean, you're going to have to use the wall to learn new shapes and heavier shapes, as you progress. That's something that you're going to have to do forever. You'll have to use the wall as a tool to not worry about balance and just learn how to get into these new positions and build strength in these new positions without balancing them. That's something you do up to the highest level. And then the last way that we use the wall as a tool, at least on this list, is as a constraint. So a good example of using the wall as a constraint is with kick-ups. And the goal is to try to find the amount of kick you need to use to either get the heel just lightly touching the wall, or even better, not touching the wall at all, and working on the precision. Okay, I need to kick up this much to get my weight over my hands without flying over and without flying back. Another good way we can use the wall as a constraint is if we're starting to try to find and rack up time balancing off the wall or even changing shapes off the wall. So now, let's say I'm trying to go for 5 shape changes. I can come off the wall, and now the wall behind me is a constraint, and my goal is to keep the weight in my hands without touching the wall behind me as I go through different shapes. So without using the wall to learn these concepts that I went over in this video, and maybe you're just kicking up in the middle of the room, you're relying a lot more on chance versus a system that's proven to work. So the wall is your friend, not your enemy. Use that bad boy. And if you like this video, drop a like, thumbs up, subscribe. Let's go, gamers.